device you're wearing is hooked into your upper and lower jaws. When the timer in the back goes off, your mouth will be permanently ripped open.
Although the Saw franchise, movies that depict graphic, gruesome torture, is merely Hollywood, the use of physical and psychological torture is very real in our world. There has been recent controversy on whether or not the United States should use torture as an interrogation tactic against terrorism. Torture is defined as the intentional infliction of severe physical or mental pain or suffering in order to intimidate, coerce, obtain information or confession, or to punish. The use of torture dates back to 530 AD but became infamous mainly during medieval times. Many torture techniques were used during this time period, including rat torture, in which a rat is encaged on one's abdomen with a flame burning the rat, forcing it to claw and burrow into the victim's stomach. The head crusher, which is pretty self-explanatory, and a technique in which the victim is hung from their feet, causing all blood to rush to the head, which forces the victim to remain conscious as they are being sawed in half. In modern day, torture is used throughout the world, but in the United States, it became prevalent after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. The use of enhanced interrogation techniques is most often justified when being used to gain information against terrorism, but is an issue because it makes one define what is ethical, however, can pose an advantage in politics and safety for citizens. President George W. Bush highly encouraged the use of torture and in 2002 created a detention facility at the Guantanamo Bay Naval Base in Cuba, in which suspected terrorists were severely tortured as a means to obtain information. Once President Obama came into office, however, he expressed that he was against torture and claimed to have shut down the detention facility. It was revealed in 2010 that at least 200 prisoners remained. The topic of torture also played a role in the 2016 presidential election.
Would you allow U.S. interrogators to waterboard terrorist prisoners in order to extract information?
Absolutely. And don't tell me it doesn't work. Torture works, okay, folks? Absolutely fine. But we should go much stronger than waterboarding.
Those who are in support of using enhanced interrogation techniques argue that it is necessary for the safety of people against groups such as ISIS. Those who oppose it, however, believe that torture is immoral and useless. It is my belief that the U.S. should not use torture as an interrogation technique because it is unethical, and torture has many negative effects on the brain that can affect the validity of what one confides. There are many different techniques the CIA uses to torture individuals that have been revealed. One is known as learned helplessness, in which torturers break down an individual's self-control until he or she is emotionally and psychologically unequipped to disobey. This technique compels people to blame themselves for their treatment and causes one's self-esteem to completely disintegrate. Furthermore, a man named Mohamedou al-Slahi was a prisoner in Guantanamo Bay for 14 years due to his previous affiliation to Al-Qaeda a decade prior. He was committed in 2002 and released in October of this year. He kept a journal depicting what happened to him in his time of captivity, and in 2015 his memoir was published. In it, he revealed what the U.S. did to him. As he exemplifies, he was raped, humiliated, starved, overfed, brutally beaten, and forced to drink large amounts of salt water. It was realized several years later that Slahi was innocent, but he still remained in Guantanamo. This torture destroys an individual. This torture is dubious. In his memoir, Slahi admits that he began divulging false information to escape the U.S.'s torture, which illustrates that torture can be unreliable. If Slahi purposely lied, how many others do the same? Additionally, Shane O'Mara, a professor of experimental brain research at Trinity College Dublin, argues that torture is ineffective due to the way memory works. Memory is created and stored in the anterior thalamus, and the memories are fragile and easily subject to revision loss, especially due to the incorporation of new info and fatigue, stress, and pain. In O'Mara's research, he concluded that torture impairs one's ability to encode memories and takes away any hope of obtaining new, useful information. Torture also causes growth in the regions of the brain that process fear and stress. All in all, torture psychologically destroys an individual and is too difficult to know the truth of what one says whilst their brain is being significantly damaged. Therefore, the U.S. should not use torture as an interrogation technique.